appears that a lot of the criticism about the deficiencies of the European Union, say in climate policy or in trade policy, are attributable to the lack of cohesiveness and enforcement of a common position. Do you think that we can get nearer to success in any of these areas by making arrangements even looser?
I think that is a contradiction. The looser you are, the stronger you are. That might be a philosophical question, but has no practical life, nothing to do. And we have to see, and we talked about the Netherlands. I just come today from the Netherlands and have talked to most of the parliamentary groups there and the government. They, in the Netherlands, see it differently than Mr. O'Brien, I can assure you, and they will do so next week. And therefore, we should leave it to the Dutch how to deal with the Dutch referendum. I think it will go in the right direction. I think the most important point is what Professor Gibbons said, sovereignty plus. That, I think, was the key word here. When we have sovereignty, you have the strength to go for it. And if you have lost in many questions this strength, we have to come together, share it in order to get the strength back, in order to get the sovereignty back for our people. And we come to trade policy. There might be some question of trade policy wrong, as it might be also wrong in the United Kingdom trade policy if it would be national responsibility. That is a question of political majorities and so on, but not of the principle. And in pollution, if the European solution is not enough, Britain can do more, because this is a question of minimum standards. Everyone can do more than on European level. Nobody would stop Britain to have less carbon in the air. Just do it in a looser context, because it's so loose that you can do that. Why are you not doing that? I think it's perfectly possible. Our question is, in many cases, are we Europeans in the future also actor on a global level, or are we victims? If every individual European country would go alone in trade WTO negotiation, we would have zero influence. Together we have influence. And this, I think, is the question, that this influence sometimes is not done in a proper way. That it's a question of political fight, as it is always, but it has nothing to do with the principle. And in general, we have to see that it goes very much forward. And here's also a point which the Commissioner said, Vice President said rightly. More and more questions in this global order, more and more standards are set in an international level. And no one of these standard setters has a democratic legitimation. If it's the big companies, or if it's dealt with by diplomats who play the legislator and not anymore the national parliaments. And therefore, if the Europeans stick together and do it together with a democratic legitimation and more democratic legitimation, and the European Parliament with co-decision rights, with national governments in the Council with legitimation by national parliaments, then we can do that, have a strength that these standards, which we have developed in a common legal order, with a democratic legitimation, can put that on the world stage. And this is a totally different thing to anything else. I would not have, setting up in a global order, more and more a situation that standards sets by companies or diplomats. I would like to have parliaments behind it, national parliaments and European Parliament. And this, I think, European integration is the first way that in this time of globalization we get an answer together. I will give you another answer when it comes to social policy and other settings on environmental policy. We can have relatively high standards, whether it is national competence like in social security schemes or in environmental policy, because most of our trade is done within the internal market. In Germany now, and I think that is a figure more or less for all the countries, only 10% of a national gross product is anymore done with an expert outside the European Union. So our dependence on that, it's less than before. And therefore, this European integration process gives us a chance, despite globalization, without destroying globalization, and use the positive effects of globalization to keep standards in environment, in social policy, and so on. That, at the same time, we have to combine with competitiveness, that are not misunderstood. But I think what should we do in the emergent economies of China and India if every European country has alone to fight for standards? Nobody can be a winner, and the people then will be dissatisfied. I have sometimes the feeling that people are afraid. Many people are afraid of globalization because they do not know what impact it would have for them. And they need, in this big sea with a small boat of globalization, a harbor. And the European Union can give them sometimes a harbor, a nation state not anymore. And therefore, I think it's such a safeguard. But they do not know that. We should explain it more. That, I think, is one of our failures.
Thank you, Omar. Now, Mr. O'Brien wanted to come back, and then I'm going to open it up. Mr. O'Brien.
Okay, a couple of things. Firstly, you said, how can flexibility make us stronger? Well, that seems to me obvious. Take something like the Services Directive. We have gone down the route of agreeing a Services Directive for all 27 member states, but because we have to make sure that the most resistant member states sign up, we've now got a very watered down and pretty much useless piece of legislation. We could have had a useful directive that applied to 25 member states. I mean, maybe in the future that's the way forward. This is, remember, supposed to be helping the member states do things they want to do, not sort of pushing them around. Secondly,
we would have nothing.
Secondly, on what you said about, well, the EU doesn't stop you from doing more on the environment. Well, yeah, actually it does, because it has various one-size-fits-all policies. The EU, for example, has a 10% biofuels target, which is going to reach by 2010. Now, I think biofuels are a disaster. The Royal Society of Engineers is this evening discussing a paper which says that they are, quote, a con, because the amount of energy you have to put into them, harvesting, growing, fertilizing, and then refining the crop means it doesn't really take you very far forward, and of course they make you continue to be dependent on oil and fossil fuels. So they're a bad idea, but the EU is forcing us to do this. We could have an interesting debate this evening about biofuels, but there would be no point because it's an EU requirement and there's no way out of it. So that's why one size fits all is a problem. You say the answer is to explain more. Well, can you explain this? If the European Parliament is really moving towards building a European demos, why has turnout in every single election since 1979 fallen?
First, I've not said that. And, will be the European demos, but we have now more and more questions which on the European-wide debated, for example, the climate change question and others. So we get more and more questions where we have the same debates in all our member countries. But I will tell you another story. This has to do with the constitutional treaty. If there would be election for the House of Commons, which would not be combined with the elections of a prime minister, then you would have a much lower turnout. And therefore this constitutional treaty, for example, it's important because in the future, the election of the President of the Commission has to do with the election of the European Parliament. That will be a very important change. This point in the Constitutional Treaty is not very much aware, but this will come then also the point. And you have also to see that we have different turnouts in different member countries. If the parties in a country declare this is not so important and do not spend money for election campaigns, then you have a certain result. In other countries, they do it more. In Italy, you have a turnout of 90%. So if you have such a low turnout in the United Kingdom, please come not to other countries and blame them for that.